Like,
Good. Good.
We are doing good, ma'am. And you?
great. I was just there for 10 minutes for your previous class, and I think you must be already tired, like listening and engaging in this topic. I'm just trying to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oops. Second. Yeah. So today we'll be discussing this to an extent economy or economics based field, which I'm not an expert of, like all this economical or economic analysis. So just in case if you have any intervention in between, which is in regard with the economy part or of this demography, then you can really intervene and comment and just make it more interactive. Do you remember what we had last time? We discussed different approaches on diaspora studies. And if you remember, we just went through the class, language, history, memory, and all this stuff. Today, what we are going to discuss is the demographic imperatives. And I'm not sure if you are tired. Maybe you are tired, but just for your, just to be more engaged in this topic, perhaps if any of you would like to say what demographic imperative is, what do you think it can be or it is, it would be really nice. So that would be a nice start to our lecture or our engagement with this topic. If any of you wants to say or his or her ideas on demographic imperatives, you are really welcome. What do you think? What it can be? Okay. Let's go to the other. I will tell you yes, please.
Is it about the demography of the population or in a region? It is changing due to these movement of people over a period of time. Say, for example, if I take state of Kerala,
Yeah,
there are more and more senior population based, and more of
right.
young population is moving to other cities, towns, or maybe other countries. Is that what it means?
Great. That's part of the demographic imperative, of course. And we will, while discussing this topic, we'll go to the aging population also. That's a good point that you raised. Now let's just gather whatever you have said now. Let's see that in the next slide, what it is like. I'm sure you know what demography is. I will not go and discuss that. Demographic imperative, like you said, it is the characteristics of the population, like the class, age, sex, ethnicity, orientation, skill level. And like you mentioned, it's also related to that specific point of time. Very well said. Now, let's see what we are going to discuss, like within this 1 hour. What we will talk about is, and what we will try to understand is the demographic feature of international migration, the demographic impacts on international migration, the demography of Indian diaspora. What what do you think? What can be the factors for global migration? Generally, the factors for shaping the migration are very complex and they are very diverse. There is no uniformity, and there are various factors starting from the political, economic, social, technical aspects and going to the social, cultural, and everything can be like a factor for global migration. And people, they choose to move from one place to another place, from one country to another country, from one location to another, for many reasons. Some they do to escape poverty. Other people, they escape persecution or war. And another group of people, they may seek migration for new opportunities, jobs, study, and for better quality of life. As you see in this slide, the total estimated, like the number of people living in a country other than their countries of birth in 2020 was 281 million, which is about 128 million more than in 1990s. You can see that the number of the people living outside of their place of origin, of their country of origin, increased during the 2020s as compared to 1990s. And the World Migration Report you can see here, which was the latest one, 2022, states that the largest corridors tend to be from developing countries to larger economies, such as those of the United States, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Germany. These large corridors, they can also reflect this can also reflect that conflict and related displacements, like from the developing countries, like I mentioned, to the more developed countries. The reasons of that can be like the conflicts also, such as from Syria, Turkey, and in recent times, of course, COVID it has also an impact on the work culture and digitalization and everything. It also had a great impact on the global migration and the factors of that. But other factors of global migration can also be, like I mentioned, the technological changes and the COVID pandemic, COVID-19. Of course, economic, political, and military power, they can also play a big role in the global migration and the flow of people. When I'm talking about the economic, political, and military power, we should also think about the core human values that were challenged and during the as a result of military power or political power, and as combined with other factors, the geopolitical transformation will also impact the migration flow significantly. We should also consider this. Going forward, like moving forward, considering all the factors that we mentioned just a few seconds ago, the dynamics of global migration, they are generally from north to south, or basically from south to north, from developing countries to more developed countries. And the aging population, like Vinod, if I'm not mistaken, he mentioned about the aging population that can also play a role in the dynamics. And it's also one of the dynamics of global migration. And of course, the feminization of migration is another dynamic. Talking about the corridors, generally it's happening from south to north, like we talked about. Like if we take the global south, it's basically the unemployment and the lack of productive employment that drive people to move to other side of the globe. And here you can see this graph, top 20 origin countries and the top destination countries. I'm not sure if you can, if it's visible to you, like the top origin countries is India, Mexico, Russia, China, United Kingdom, the first 5 countries I just mentioned, and the destination countries basically they are like global north countries, if you can see here. United States, Germany, Russia, but then Saudi Arabia comes also in this list. United Kingdom, Canada, France. We'll discuss now why, like the Gulf countries also. And of course, there has been a divide in the global political economy that also impacted the migration, like we mentioned, the unemployment, the lack of productive employment. But broadly speaking, the flow of migration is characterized by these 2 big corridors, the global south and the global north. Though there has been migration within south-south and north-north corridors also, the nature differs as compared to south-north migration. And to an extent, the concept of this global north and global south is not a geographical term, rather it is used to describe a group of countries along their socio-economic and political characteristics. Now, in more detail, like you can see here, the top destination countries, it's a bigger, like, I think it's more visible here. Again, the US, Germany, the 7 top destination countries, US, Germany, and the top origin countries like in the previous slide also, India, Mexico, Russia. According to this report, as you can see, the United States, it has the highest number of immigrants, which were foreign-born individuals, with around 47 million in 2015, 5 times more than in Saudi Arabia, which was here, around 10 million people. And Canada also, it's more than Canada also, which was around 8 million. However, in the proportion to their population size, these 2 countries, like Canada and Saudi Arabia, they have more immigrants, which is if we take in the proportionate way, like 34% and 21%, versus the United States, which was 15%. And we can also see like the next top countries of origin for the origin countries, top origin countries, India, Mexico, Russia, China. You can also clearly see that the global south contributed largely as migrants entering countries to the global north. This is just an observation. And going to the dynamic, the aging population, which was another demographic shift, and it was one of the dynamics of the global migration. You can see that on the one hand, the migrations reduce along with the age. On the other hand, it also creates demand for migrant labor force, such as demand on healthcare system. This is just a graph for you to see. I think it's a little bit small figure, like you can see here, but the aging population, the increase of aging population as compared to the 1990s, and then we are coming to 2017, 2020s again, and then it's there is a slight increase, not slight, I would say, big increase of the aging population that also brings a shift in the global migration. But it is also like India's as a country in the global side, you also have to know like the global south generally is having younger population, relatively younger population that is migrating to the global north. That is the reason, like when Vinod was mentioning that in Kerala there is an increase in aging population. The reason for that is the younger population of global south, whether they are skilled, semi-skilled, or non-skilled labor, they tend to migrate to global north. That's why in a home country, we notice the aging population. In many cases, these migrants who are also moving to global north, they are not only, like I mentioned, high-end worker, but also they constitute the general group of this elderly, housemaid, and many other in the low-skilled areas. And this aging population, you can yourself notice in your home country that it can bring a challenge to the global economy, but on a local level also it can have an impact, or it can be a serious challenge for the economy. As the ratio of the aged to the total population increases and the working population declines, productivity is seriously affected. And you can see that the growth is also the same way, and the social security systems, they become less fiscally sustainable. And you are welcome. If you noticed any example of this aging population on ground, you can intervene and say your comments also, and it can highly have an impact on, not an impact, it can affect the investment behavior and the labor supply also. And based on that, the supply responses as well. I will not go deep into this, but just keep in mind that the aging population, like we mentioned, then the dynamics of the aging population, it is another shift in the global migration. And yeah, that's it. But then when we go to the other, the feminization of migration, this is another interesting aspect, another interesting, that brings an interesting dynamics into the global migration. Let me see. Yeah, this, I will go to the other one, like in the UN data also, there is a big focus on the migration as a gender equality problem or issue. But before going to that, let's see the statistics. Like you see here, since 1990s, the proportion of female migrants has increased in all regions except East Asia and Pacific. On the contrary, in Europe and Central Asia, the share of female migrants slightly increased from 52% in 1990s to 52.4% in 2017. In South Asia, the percentage of women among international migrants rose from 46.7% to 48.3% during this period. And if you see in contrast to this, in the East Asian Pacific region, the share of female migrants decreased. Like in 1990s, it was 48%, and in the early 2000s, it was 41.7%. So after 2000, the flow of female migrants decreased. One of the reasons of this was that women were already migrating not as spouses, let's say, which is very typical in the global in the region of Global South or East Asia and Pacific. But they were already migrating as independent migrants to seek better economic, financial opportunities, job opportunities. And that was the reason, not only due to marriage, but also due to their own career and career growth. That's why the number drastically increased for the East Asia and Pacific region as independent migrants. And let me see this when we go to the that is one of the reasons that UN Women, it brings this the entire idea of that migration as a gender equality issue. And I just brought this from their website, that I'm not sure if you can read this, but that despite their valuable contribution to various areas in their host country, both in their host country and their home country, and despite the remittances, not only financial, but also social remittances, social capital that they bring to their home country, in the host country, according to UN, women migrants are still they still have challenges as a woman. This is just for your information, and if you want to know more, maybe you can go through this through the UN statistics and to this UN Women website. The distribution, as we mentioned, like the domestic workers by sex and broad sub-region, like the percentage. This is just a graph for you, the female migration. Like in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, Northern Africa, all these countries are mentioned. I'm not sure if this is if it's interesting there. Just for your general knowledge, you can look into that. Like it can give you some more maybe idea on how the women migrants, like the skilled and non-skilled migrants, are distributed all over the world, and basically in the like see Eastern Europe, Eastern Asia, in these countries. But while discussing all this, the main thing that comes for us to talk about is the international migrant stock. Like this entire time when we were talking about the aging population, women migrants, another dynamic for global migration. We were basically mentioning, and we were basically like keeping in mind the international migrant stock. And what is that? It is the number of people that are born in a country, like you see, other than that, in which they live, including the refugees. Like it's the statistics, it's the data collected about the migration flows outside their country of origin. But as you see, because of several countries, they lack this data. Who are the foreign born in their countries, who are not. It's not too much visible for the UN. Basically, this is the UN population division that's dealing and collecting data on international migrant stock. We can't say that there is a precise data on the on that, but still, the overall number of migrants in world regions or at the global level, do not quite represent the overall number of foreign-born persons. It's not that much visible. to calculate and to have a specific or a certain number or certain data on the international migrant stock. The estimates of the number of international migrants, they are disaggregated by age, sex, country or area of origin, and they are basically, they collect the data based on the national level statistics. That's why in many cases, like I mentioned, it's not that much visible because not many countries, they have this data, and it's not that easy. But population registers and nationally representative surveys provided information on the number and composition of international migrants. This is just the like the ideal way that it should happen, but as I mentioned, it's not that feasible for many countries. The last one, if I'm not mistaken, the last survey or the last data collected on this was in 2020. Yeah, in mid-year 2020. This is the global migration stock I mentioned before. Now this is in just in more visualized way that you can see here, gender-wise, of course, like male and female migrants. Again, you can just have a look. I won't comment on it. Maybe you can have your own, like, it will just give you an idea. This data, the source of this data is as you can see, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs Population Division. It's the UN Population Division that generally collects this data and collects the surveys from the national levels to make up an entire picture of the migration, international migration stock. Saying all this, yeah, you can see here, like, I'm not sure, like, see Europe, North America, Latin America, they have more percentage of female migration than male migration. And various studies also have found that some of the major reasons, as I mentioned before, these are marriage, education, employment. But nowadays, of course, like the independent migrants, the number of independent migrants, women migrants increased. That's why the number also decreased drastically, women migrants, because, yeah. Saying all this, if you have anything to say on this, you are welcome to comment before we go on to the migration stock or to the of the Indian diaspora. Just let me know if something was not clear to you, or there is something that you want to comment in, then we'll go to the Indian diaspora in this regard. Okay. We'll pass on the stock of Indian diaspora. I am not the one to tell you that the Indian diaspora had historically 3 phases of migration. I know that you all well know, you know this very well, that the colonial period is one historical phase. Another one is the post-independence. Then, of course, it comes after the 1990s, after the liberation of the national neoliberal period. In current period, when we are talking about the flows of Indian migration, generally we distinguish between the high-skilled professional migration, which is basically happening to, like we talked about in the previous slides, to the mostly to the countries of global south, but of course not only. High-skilled labor is mostly migrating to the region of to the countries of global north, let's say like that. And there is also flow of unskilled and semi-skilled labor, which is mostly happening to the Gulf countries, but mostly, I'm not saying only, but mostly. And this happened, of course, one of the reasons was the oil boom in the Gulf region. And the dispersion of people from India and the formation of Indian diaspora communities is the result of different waves of migration, as you can see, which spans over hundreds of years. And the reasons for this are different. The historical phases also, you can see that like in the colonial period, the reasons, you know, the indentured labor, which was happening basically to the Dutch, British colonies in the early 17th, 18th centuries. And of course, this was this like the forced migration or the slave migration and indentured labor, like I mentioned. And then we are coming to the post-independence period and the neoliberal period, which was guest work program during this post-colonialism. But when we are talking about, as far as we are discussing the demographic dynamics of diaspora and migration flow, we also need to take into consideration the political economic development, of course, the economic aspect of that as well. As you can see from this graph, the stock of Indian diaspora has increased. In the 1990s, it was 6.6 million. And by 2019, it increased. It became like 17.5 million. And of course, one of the reasons of migration in the 1960s, post-independence, was also the economic and political economic developments in Australia. That was another, for like I mentioned here, apart from US, Canada, Australia was another destination for migration of skilled and semi-skilled, of course. Yeah. Then you can see here like the during the 1990s, the Indian diaspora was mainly concentrated in the less developed countries. Here, 1990s. They were mostly concentrated on in less developed countries or regions. Between 1990s and 2019, the proportion of the Indian diaspora community in the more developed regions has increased. You can see. Of course, now in the more developed countries, it's not more than in less developed, but it's slightly increased, way more than what we had in 1990s. It increased until 31.59% in 2019 already. And saying this, the concentration of Indian diaspora across high income, middle income, and low income countries in percents. In terms of income, a level of countries, in 1990s, only 48%, 48.70, you can see here, as the Indian diaspora, they were more concentrated in the high income countries. And that by 2019 has increased to 85.92%. This. And when we are talking about the concentration of Indian diaspora across the globe, you can see that within Asian countries, around 79% resides in Western Asian countries and 18% is in the Southern Asia. The remaining Indian diaspora communities are spread across Central Asia, Eastern Asia, Southeastern Asia. In Western Asia, United Arab Emirates, the most preferred location for Indian migrant flow, migration for Indian migrants is the Saudi Arabia, Oman. In the South Asia region, the proportion of Indian migrants is highest in Pakistan, which is followed by Nepal. And in Eastern Asia, we can see Japan has the highest proportion of Indian settled, followed by China, Hong Kong, and European countries. They have, like you can see here, around 67.90% Indian diaspora in the world, followed by Northern American countries with 19.25% share and European countries with just 8.5. So just summing up all these things, what we can say that there is on the one hand we have complex dynamics of migration, and it depends on the specific time period. It depends on sex, age, on gender, on everything. And based on that, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes for the first time the contribution of migration to sustainable development, in which 10 out of 17 goals contain targets and indicators that are relevant to migration or mobility. And considering all these things, the policies of migration or migration policies on various levels, like on regional, national, international, they also have to fit the dynamics of the fast developments and the fast developments and the dynamics of the international migration, global migration, considering the increasing female migration, aging population, and their need in terms of skill, knowledge, development of new, and of course, like we talked about, the COVID-19 also was another brought another dynamics, another development in the entire flow of migration. If you really want to to go into the economic and the political economic aspect and to have more overview or deeper overview and knowledge on this, this was the reference that I brought for you to have a look at. Diasporas and Economic Development, a review of the evidence and policy. This is an article by Danny Bahar. It's just a 20-page article, if I'm not mistaken, so you can just find it. It's open source on Google also. You can just get it from there, and just for your free time, you can have a look at it. That's it, guys. If you have anything to say or to add, please do so.
Just a question on one of those charts that you shared.
Yeah.
I think when we were looking at some of those source and destination countries, I was able to also see, like, I think if I'm not wrong, India was there on both sides of that table.
Yeah, as an origin country and as a destination country, you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So does that mean there are a lot of migration happening to India, or is it more of reverse migration?
That's an interesting question, actually. See, there of course, migration is not only one way. There is always a reverse migration also. The reverse thing is happening as well, and it depends mm, on the political agenda and the receiving country as well as the home country. But as I can see, there are different programs by the Indian government that are to attract the Indians, the people of Indian origin to be back to India. And there are many programs for the foreigners also to come and invest in India, to come and do business in India. I do believe that it can have that thing also, but in one of the slides I mentioned that the skill migration, one of the reasons of the aging population in India was that the skill migration, which is of more younger generation, they tend to migrate to the countries of global north and to find better opportunities in the global north. I'm not sure if that the number is equal in that sense, but I do believe that there can be a reverse one also. As long as, like, for example, if we take the unskilled labor and semi-skilled labor migration to Gulf countries, that's not something which is permanent, of course. After some time, they come back to India. Before, as a younger generation being in the host country, and after some time, of course, they come back to India. I do believe, yes, that there is a reverse one also, but it cannot be more than what we have as the origin country. That's again one of the reasons of the aging population. That's has big implications also on the impact on the aging population in India. But still, India is a young country, of course.
Yeah, of
There
course.
is, yeah.
Of course.
I mean, it's not both ways it's happening. Migration is never one way, and as I mentioned, it also depends on various programs on the politics, the domestic politics of the home country as well, and of course, and not only that, but the host country also. Somewhere, one of the characteristics, if you remember when we were talking in the previous lectures, is that the diaspora, the differences between diaspora and migration is that migration is a flow. It's constantly like moving for better opportunities, right? So when there is no more opportunity, and they also feel very much unsafe, not I'm not from all aspects. It can be safety can be defined from all aspects, whether economically or politically or socially. So they don't feel part of that host country, and within some period of time, of course, they always have the idea in their mind that they have to return to their home countries. So that's one of the differences, and of course, the reverse one is always happening.
Okay. Just
I hope I made sense when I was saying it, and you had some I made it clear to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank
Just an add-on to that, there is also this data point that we get to see, right, in terms of number of people renouncing the citizenship, right, every year, which is
Yeah.
around like 2 lakh plus people renouncing citizenship every year. I think in the last at least 2 years, we have heard that number. Is there also, is there anybody looked into that data, and also considering the reverse migration aspect, do people come back and again take back the citizenship, or Do they do that, or is there any articles or research around that you are familiar with?
I will look into that, but I also wanted to ask you whether, like you were talking about India, right?
Mhm.
Your question is on
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
Do you know whether it's easy to get citizenship back in India? I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I
Is it?
mean, if you are born here and then you changed your citizenship, or probably if you're the previous generation, if they were born here, that there are routes and process
Yeah,
established where you could kind of get your citizenship.
like
But
a person of Indian origin. Yeah, but see, uh, in all the globally, if we take in Europe, in West Europe, um, in the countries of North America, so this the tendency is of having very strict policies on migration. Of course, it is focused on legal migration, but it can have some impact on the Indian migration as well, migrants as well. So perhaps you are right. There can be scholars also who are looking into this, taking back their citizenship. Um, it's not because, like I mentioned, it's not always because of the home country, but it also depends on the host country policies towards migrants. But I will look into this, and if we'll see. Like there are many scholars who work on the belonging aspect of the of diaspora and migrants, and within this belonging, the citizenship comes forward as an institutional way of belonging to your own home country. But whether they looked into this, taking the citizenship back, denouncing, then again taking it back, I'm not sure. But it's an interesting question. I will really look into that, and next time when we meet, I will let you know.
sure, thank you.
Yeah. But I know that there are, when we were talking about this migration within this gender inequality within migration, I know some young scholars, Indian scholars, who are working on the female migrants in the Gulf countries. So if you are interested into that topic, perhaps in some time we can discuss that also, and we can meet with these scholars also, if you are interested in that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to hear their findings.
Okay, like domestic workers, like we mentioned, right? Like they are facing women migrants, they are facing many challenges as domestic workers in the service sector also. So their work is more focused on that, but from the sociological aspect.
Yeah, makes sense.
Ma'am, how would you rate it? Is migration a positive or a negative phenomenon?
It's a negative phenomenon.
Okay. But it is also being celebrated. Say, we take pride in having the largest diaspora in the world.
Migration, I don't know. Are you celebrating? I mean, do you think it is something to be celebrated? It's not, I'm not sure if it is celebrated. But of course, any migration can bring, like, if we take India, it brings remittances, financial remittances, especially to the South states. It brings social capital also to the home country. If we take education, knowledge, like in regard with higher education, it brings social capital also, but as well as social capital to the host country. So it's like two-way process. Migration is never one-way process. I don't think it is. It may be celebrated that way, but of course, migration has it's like it's always within dynamics, like within a dynamic development, and it can bring both like it can both have a negative aspect and positive also from economic, social, political, various aspects. And of course, it depends on the time period as well. It depends, like I talked about, the policies of the receiving country and the home country. So it can, we may not say that it is it can be celebrated or it is a negative phenomenon. Migration is just like it's very much in a complex development, depending on many factors and reasons, and it can have both negative aspects and positive also. So when, for example, let's take an example that if one receiving country has very good, very favorable policies towards migration. In that case, skilled migrants bring their contribution to that host country. And in return, they take back social capital also with them to the home country. And it can be vice versa. So it's not, yeah.